In this tutorial I will show how to customize and edit the energy model regarding the surfaces and the zones created conceptually by the energy settings. And how this conceptual energy model is created is shown in another video. Here is the focus on more detailed and specialized editing and customization. At the Analyze panel that is shown here, the energy model display is different kind of representation of the model. If we press just to show mass form, then it's back to the simple shape without any conceptual glazing percentages. So by looking at the show mass zones first, then it shows the different conceptual zones. This one I can edit, so it's not only office all zones here. For example, if this one was some toilets and so on, I can change this by selecting it, and under properties, under space type, at the moment there's written building, and this means that it takes the settings from the energy settings that is specified here on our energy settings. But if I click here and select some of the other, then this specific zone will have other properties of space types. So let us say this zone is a restrooms zone, is changed from office to a restroom properties, and that is properties of how often this is used and how many people there is in this zone, etc. I could also change the condition type, but I will just leave it as heated and cooled in this case. So I could do this for all the different zones, and if I have break this model up more detailed with more non-conceptual zones, I could have specified this even more detailed. If we take the next one, show mass surface, then we have the opportunity of selecting each of the different surfaces for each of the zones. Here I need to use the tab button on the keyboard to select the right surface. This example I will look more closely on the facade, but I could also select the roof or floors. So if I select this one, I get some similar option that I had with the zone. Under energy model, I can change this from being applied from the energy settings or choosing by surface, and when I choose this one, then I can go in and change the, for example, the percentage glazing. So let's say this room there were 80% of glazing, and then we'll see it'll change the glazing area to 80%. Could also change the cell height, maybe it's only cell height of 200, something like that. But this doesn't change that much. I could also remove the shade if I want. I could also make it deeper, like 600. I could also change the constructions, but typical at this stage it doesn't matter that much because it's so conceptual. But the different glazing percentage, that could be interesting regarding the different orientation to the south or north or whatever. And for some very special cases, you can actually also change the subcategory. This is a mass exterior wall. If it was very blobby or curved shape, sometimes it cannot understand if it's a roof or a wall, then possible to change this so it have other kind of properties, because there are other heat losses through a roof than a wall. And just to show another example, let's say this room here also had skylights or zone. This restroom zone changed from energy settings to surface, saying alright, there's a percentage of skylights of 20%, and the size of the skylights is maybe 600 times 600, and then we see that it will create small openings all over this surface. If I want to customize the facade openings even more, then there is another method where I draw the openings manually, and the first thing I need to do that is remove the glazing that is created automatically by the energy settings. Selecting those surfaces I want to customize manually, remove the values by edit energy settings to by surface, changing the percentages to 0. That means there is no glazing added to this surface. Then I go in and edit the mask I've created. But a good tip is here to have a view that just have the mask turned on without any context, so it's easier to select stuff and not having the context confusing the selection. And I start by selecting the mask, saying edit in place, and if we zoom in, I have created a hatch for this material I have added to this mask. Just to show this, select the mask, and under material I have created a new material that I call mask divided surface, and this material have under the graphics a surface pattern where I've created some crosshatch that is 400 times 400. This could be also 200 or 600. It's just a number that is easy to use. So I make sure I've selected over here and press OK, and this I can snap to now when I using this other method of placing windows. Click on left so I look in front on this facade, select the surface I want to edit and click on split face, move the cursor onto the surface I want to split. Sometimes it will not snap to the hatch. Either it can be that you have to be closer to the surface or have to rotate it a little bit and zoom in, and then you can snap to the intersection of the hatch, for example. I could also use the rectangle, and in this way I can very easy have a little bit more control over where I snap. Instead of if I couldn't snap, as we see here, I cannot really get where I'm snapping. If I now wanted to have it, let's say 400 from the level here, it's quite tough to get the right dimension. I could of course give it a dimension like this and try to snap to the level and the top and select the top line and then change the value to the value I want to have. But as you can see, it takes some time. So creating this, so to say, guide grid on the surface is a quite good tip for creating specific openings. And these split surface I can just copy, selecting, press on copy, then I can create more of these openings and select to the hatch. And when I've created the openings I want to create, then I just end the editing mode of the mask, and then we will see that it creates glazing or glazed openings in those areas where I've split the surface. Just use shaded so we can see it a little bit better. Now we can look into the room, can see the floor here and the walls. So this is a method of customized windows opening by using the split surface method. There is a limitation with this method. When we do this, we cannot use the conceptual shade generation. So if we want to have some kind of shape, we need to create a family that can create the shade